Jake Miller pushed open the heavy wooden door of his cabin and stepped into the freezing Montana night. The wind howled through the tall pine trees around his home. Snow fell so thick he could barely see 10 feet in front of him. He pulled his thick coat tighter around his body and walked toward the woodshed. Jake lived alone in the mountains. He had been a soldier once, an engineer who built things and fixed broken machines. But that was years ago. Now he just wanted peace and quiet. His cabin sat miles away from the nearest town. No neighbors, no noise, just him and the wilderness. The storm had been going for 3 days. Jake needed more wood for his fireplace or he would freeze. He grabbed his flashlight and crunched through the deep snow. Each step sank almost to his knees. The cold bit at his face like angry teeth. As he reached for the woodshed door, his flashlight beam caught something strange in the snow. At first, Jake thought it might be a deer or elk that had died in the storm. But as he moved closer, his heart stopped. It was not an animal. It was small, about the size of a child. But it was not human. The creature lay curled up in a ball, barely moving. Its skin was a pale blue color, and it wore torn rags that looked like they had once been some kind of uniform. Strange marks covered its arms and neck like scars or brands burned into the flesh. Jake knelt down and brushed snow away from the creature's face. It had large eyes, bigger than human eyes, and pointed ears. Its breathing was so shallow he could barely tell if it was alive. The creature was clearly not from Earth. What the hell? Jake whispered to himself. He had seen many strange things during his time as a soldier, but nothing like this. The creature's lips moved slightly, making tiny sounds that Jake could not understand. It was trying to speak, but the words were in a language he had never heard. The sounds were soft and musical, even though the creature was clearly dying. Jake made a quick decision. He could not leave any living thing to die in the snow, no matter what it was or where it came from. He gently lifted the creature in his arms. It was surprisingly light, like it was made of hollow bones. The cold had made its body stiff, but Jake could feel a weak heartbeat. He carried the creature back to his cabin as fast as he could through the deep snow. Once inside, Jake laid it down on his couch near the fireplace. He threw more wood on the fire to make the room warmer. Under the light of his oil lamps, Jake could see the creature more clearly. It was definitely female, with delicate features and long silver hair that looked almost like metal threads. The strange marks on her skin were not natural. Someone had burned them there on purpose. They looked like symbols, or letters from some alien writing system. Jake had seen marks like these before during the war. They were the kind of marks slavers put on people they owned. His stomach turned as he realized what this meant. This creature had been someone's property. He found his first aid kit and checked the creature's vital signs as best he could. Her pulse was weak but steady. Her skin was ice cold, but she was not frostbitten. Jake wrapped her in warm blankets and put a pillow under her head. As he worked, the creature's eyes opened slightly. They were a deep purple color, unlike anything Jake had ever seen. She looked at him with fear and confusion. She tried to speak again, but only weak sounds came out. "It's okay," Jake said softly. "You're safe now. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature seemed to understand his tone. Even if she did not know his words, some of the fear left her eyes. She reached out with one thin hand and touched Jake's arm. When she did, something strange happened. Jake felt emotions that were not his own. Fear, pain, and hopelessness washed over him like a wave. But under all that suffering, he felt something else, gratitude. This creature was somehow sharing her feelings with him directly, mind to mind. Images flashed in Jake's head. He saw huge metal ships floating in space. He saw creatures in dark uniforms throwing this small being out of their ship like she was garbage. He saw her falling through Earth's atmosphere, her body burning as she crashed through the sky. The mental connection lasted only a few seconds, but it told Jake everything he needed to know. This creature was not dangerous. She was a victim. Someone had hurt her, used her, and then thrown her away to die. Jake spent the rest of the night taking care of her. He made warm soup and helped her drink small sips. He changed her torn clothes for some of his old shirts that were too big for her small frame. He kept the fire burning hot and checked on her every few minutes. By morning, her breathing was stronger, and her skin had returned to a healthier shade of blue. She slept peacefully for the first time since Jake had found her. As Jake sat in his chair watching over her, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had always thought humans were alone in the universe. Now he had proof that other intelligent life existed, and it was sleeping on his couch. The storm finally stopped and sunlight streamed through his windows. Jake looked out at the peaceful white landscape and knew his quiet life in the mountains was over. Everything had changed the moment he found her in the snow. He did not know who she was, where she came from, or why someone had left her to die. But Jake Miller had made a promise to himself years ago. He would never again stand by and watch innocent people suffer. This strange blue creature was about to learn what it meant to be protected by a human being. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found the alien creature in the snow. She was getting stronger every day. Her blue skin now had a healthy glow, and she could walk around the cabin without getting tired. Jake had started calling her Zara because she reminded him of a girl he knew in school with the same gentle spirit. Zara was learning to speak English quickly. She picked up new words every day and could now have simple conversations with Jake. Her voice was soft and musical, with an accent that sounded like nothing Jake had ever heard. "Jake," she said one morning as they ate breakfast together, "I must tell you about the galaxy, about why I was left here." Jake put down his coffee cup and listened carefully. Over the past weeks, Zara had shared small pieces of her story, but never the full truth. "My people are called Illyrians," she began. "We come from a world with 3 moons and purple seas. We have special gifts. We can feel what others feel, and we can heal sickness with our touch." Jake nodded. He had experienced her telepathic abilities that first night, and he had noticed that small cuts on his hands healed faster when she was around. "The galaxy is very big, Jake. Thousands of worlds with different kinds of people, but most of them follow the same rules. The strong control the weak. Those with better weapons and faster ships make the others serve them." Zara's purple eyes grew sad as she continued. "My people were conquered long ago by the hegemony. They are a group of the most powerful races in the galaxy. They decided that Illyrians would be slaves because we are good at healing and we do not like to fight." Jake felt anger building in his chest. The idea of enslaving an entire species made him sick. "The hegemony has rules about which worlds can join their civilization," Zara explained. "A species must be able to travel faster than light on their own. They must have certain weapons and technology. If they do not, they are considered primitive." "And Earth?" Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Earth is on the forbidden list. Humans are considered too primitive to even talk to. The hegemony made a law that no one can contact your world or teach you advanced technology. They think you are barely smarter than animals." Jake laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. "So they use your world as a dumping ground for slaves they don't want anymore." Zara nodded. "When slaves get old or sick or broken, they bring them here. They think nothing intelligent could survive on such a savage world. They think the cold and the wild animals will kill anything they leave behind." "How wrong they are," Jake said quietly. "Very wrong," Zara agreed. "I have learned more about humans in 3 weeks than the hegemony learned in all their years of watching Earth. You are not primitive, Jake. You are something they have never seen before." "What do you mean?" Zara stood up and walked to the window. Outside, snow was falling again, but gently this time. "In the galaxy, beings help others only when they get something back. Trade, protection, services. But you saved me for no reason. You gained nothing. In fact, helping me could bring you danger." She turned to face Jake. "The hegemony cannot understand this. They think all intelligent life must be selfish and greedy to survive. But humans are different. You have something they lost long ago, if they ever had it at all." "What's that?" "Compassion without reason. Kindness without reward. The willingness to help strangers just because it is right." Jake thought about this as he refilled his coffee cup. So what happens now? Do they come back to check on their dumping ground? Sometimes, Zara said, but not often. They think this world is too dangerous for them to visit regularly. They wear special suits and stay in their ships when they come. Here, they're afraid of Earth. They fear disease, wild animals, unpredictable weather. Most galactic species live on controlled worlds where everything is safe and predictable. They cannot imagine surviving in a place like this. Jake smiled. Good. Let them stay afraid. Over the following days, Zara told Jake more about the galaxy. She described cities that floated in space, ships the size of mountains, and weapons that could destroy entire planets. But she also talked about the fear and loneliness that filled the lives of most galactic beings. Everyone watches everyone, she explained. No one trusts anyone. Friendship exists only when both sides benefit. Love is seen as weakness. Children are taken from their parents and raised by the state. Sounds like a miserable way to live, Jake said. It is. That is why I was so shocked when you helped me. In the galaxy, you would be considered insane for saving a stranger. But here on Earth it is normal. Jake taught Zara about human history. He showed her books about wars where people died to protect others, about explorers who risked everything to discover new things, about ordinary people who became heroes when they were needed. Your species has done impossible things, Zara said after reading about World War II. You fought enemies with better weapons and won through stubbornness and clever thinking. We don't know how to quit, Jake said. Sometimes that gets us in trouble, but sometimes it saves us. The hegemony has never faced anything like that. They win through superior force. When that does not work, they do not know what to do. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Zara suddenly became very still. Her eyes grew wide with fear. What is it? Jake asked. Ships, she whispered. Coming here. I can feel their minds from space. Jake grabbed his binoculars and went outside. In the clear night sky, he could see 3 bright lights moving in formation. They were definitely not airplanes or satellites. How long do we have? He asked when he came back inside. They will land in the valley tomorrow morning. They are coming to check if their disposal site is still secure, Jake thought quickly. Can they detect you? Not unless they scan closely. But if they see signs that someone lives here, then we make sure they don't see anything. Jake spent the night hiding all evidence that anyone lived in his cabin. He covered Zara with special blankets that would hide her heat signature. He moved his truck into the woods and covered it with branches. The next morning, 3 silver ships landed in the valley below Jake's cabin. Through his binoculars, he watched tall, thin creatures in environmental suits walk around for about an hour. They took some readings with strange devices, but they did not come up to the cabin. Jake held his breath as one of the aliens looked directly toward his hiding place. For a moment, he thought they had been discovered. But the alien just made a note on a device and went back to his ship. After the ships left, Jake realized something important. The aliens had technology that could probably detect anything they wanted, but they were lazy and careless. They did not expect to find anything, so they did not look very hard. They underestimate everything about this world, Jake said to Zara. Including us. Yes, she agreed. And that might be their biggest mistake. As Jake watched the alien ships disappear into space, he started thinking about all the other slaves that had been dumped on Earth over the years. How many had died in the cold? How many could have been saved if someone had found them? For the first time since leaving the military, Jake Miller felt like he had a mission again. Spring came early that year. The snow melted faster than usual and green grass started growing around Jake's cabin. Zara loved the changing seasons. She had never seen anything like it on her home world, where the climate stayed the same all year. On Illyria, we had gardens, but they were controlled by machines, she told Jake as they watched wildflowers bloom near the creek. The temperature, the rain, the soil, everything was managed by computers. But this is natural. It changes, on its own. Jake smiled as he watched her touch a butterfly that had landed on her finger. Nature doesn't need permission to be beautiful. Zara had changed a lot since that first night. She was stronger now, both in body and spirit. She helped Jake with daily tasks around the cabin, and she had become an excellent cook. But more importantly, she was starting to believe in herself again. "Jake," she said one evening as they sat on the porch, "I need to tell you something important about the hegemony and what they are doing to other slaves." Jake had been expecting this conversation. He could see that Zara carried a heavy burden, something she had not yet shared. "There is a place," she began slowly, "a secret base that the hegemony built in your solar system, on one of the moons of Jupiter. They call it Processing Station 7. Processing station for what? Slaves, hundreds of them from dozens of different worlds. They keep them there before deciding where to send them, or—" Zara's voice trailed off. "Or what? Or whether they are worth keeping alive." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "There's a slave camp on Europa?" "Yes. Europa has the right atmosphere for their equipment, and it is far enough from Earth that humans would never find it. They have been using it for 20 years. Jake stood up and paced across the porch. "How many slaves?" "When I was there, maybe 300. Scientists, engineers, healers, artists. The hegemony takes the best and brightest from conquered worlds. They use their knowledge and skills, then throw them away when they are no longer useful. You were there?" Zara nodded sadly. "For 2 years, I was a medical slave. They forced me to heal their soldiers after battles. If I refused or if I became too tired to work, they would hurt other slaves to punish me." Jake sat back down and put his hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry you went through that." "The worst part was not the pain," Zara said. "It was the hopelessness, knowing that no one would ever come to save us, that we would die as property of beings who saw us as tools." "But you escaped." "No. They threw me away. I got sick with something their doctors could not cure. Instead of trying to help me, they decided I was broken. So they brought me here to die." Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Do you know the layout of the station? The security, the number of guards?" Zara looked at him with surprise. "Why do you ask?" "Because I'm thinking we should go get those people." "Jake, no, that is impossible. You do not understand how powerful the hegemony is. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of Earth's. Their ships have weapons that could destroy entire cities." "Maybe. But you said it yourself. They underestimate us. They think we're primitive animals. They would never expect an attack from humans. Even if that is true, it would be suicide. There are only 2 of us." Jake grinned. "Actually, I might know a few people who would be interested in this kind of mission." The next day, Jake made a trip to town for the first time in months. He went to a small bar where ex-military people like to gather. He found exactly who he was looking for, Amy Rodriguez, who had been a pilot in his old unit. "Jake Miller," Amy said when she saw him. "I thought you had become a hermit up in those mountains." "Amy, I need to talk to you about something, privately." They went outside and Jake told her everything. At first, Amy thought he had lost his mind. But when Jake brought her up to the cabin to meet Zara, everything changed. "Holy shit," Amy whispered, when she saw Zara demonstrate her telepathic abilities. "She's really an alien. And there are hundreds more being held as slaves right here in our solar system," Jake said. Amy was a good pilot, but more importantly, she was a good person. When she learned about the suffering of the slaves, she immediately wanted to help. "What do you need?" she asked. Over the next few weeks, Jake and Amy contacted other members of their old unit. Ben Carter, who had been their communications expert, was now working as an electronics technician. Lisa Thompson, their demolition specialist, was teaching high school chemistry. One by one, they came to meet Zara and learn about the situation. One by one, they volunteered to help. "You realize this is insane," Ben said after Zara had explained the layout of the processing station. "We're talking about attacking an alien military base with equipment we build in a garage." "The best kind of insane," Lisa added with a grin. "Count me in." Zara was amazed by the humans' willingness to risk their lives for strangers they had never met. "In the galaxy, this would be considered mental illness," she told Jake. "No rational being would do what you are planning." "Good thing we're not rational," Jake replied. They spent weeks planning the mission. Zara provided detailed information about hegemony technology and security procedures. The humans contributed their military training and their talent for improvisation. The thing about the hegemony, Zara explained, is that they follow rules very strictly. Their security systems are designed to stop certain types of attacks, but if you do something they have never seen before, something not in their procedures, they do not know how to respond. Like what? Amy asked. They expect attacks to come from space, from other ships with advanced weapons. They have never defended. Against something like, what do you call it, guerrilla warfare? Jake smiled. Hit-and-run tactics. Strike fast, cause confusion, get out before they can organize a response. Exactly. Their soldiers are trained to fight in formations with heavy weapons. They are not prepared for small groups that attack from unexpected directions. The team began gathering equipment. They could not build anything as advanced as hegemony technology, but they could build things that were unpredictable. Improvised explosives, modified electronics, weapons that looked like junk but worked better than they appeared. The goal is not to win a straight fight, Jake explained to the team. It's to cause enough chaos that we can get the slaves out before the hegemony can stop us. What about afterward? Ben asked. Even if we succeed, they'll know that humans are responsible. They'll come looking for revenge. Jake looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. Then we make sure they understand that attacking Earth would be a mistake. How do we do that? By showing them that humans don't fight like anyone else in the galaxy. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we don't forget our friends. As they prepared for the mission, Jake noticed something interesting happening to his team. They were becoming more confident, more determined. The idea of fighting impossible odds did not scare them. It excited them. You know what I think? Amy said one night, as they tested their improvised spacecraft modifications. I think the galaxy has been waiting for someone like us. Someone crazy enough to try the impossible. Zara, who had been listening, smiled sadly. The galaxy has forgotten what it means to hope. Your species still remembers. 2 months after finding Zara in the snow, Jake Miller was preparing to lead an attack on an alien military base. It was the most dangerous thing he had ever attempted, but it was also the most important. As he looked at his small team of volunteers, Jake felt something he had not experienced since leaving the military. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you messed with humans and their friends. The old cargo ship did not look like much from the outside. It was a rusty commercial vessel that Amy had bought from a salvage yard. But inside, Jake's team had worked for months to transform it into something special. It's not pretty, Ben said as he finished installing the modified communication system. But it should get us to Jupiter and back. Should? Lisa asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, probably, Ben corrected with a grin. The ship's cargo bay was filled with equipment that looked like junk but had been carefully designed for their mission. Improvised cutting tools, homemade explosives, and communication jammers built from old radio parts. Remember, Zara said as she reviewed the plan one more time, the processing station has 3 main sections: the guard barracks, the control center, and the slave quarters. The slaves are kept in the lowest level because the hegemony thinks it is the most secure. They're wrong about that, Jake said. Being on the bottom level means we can approach from underneath through the moon's ice caves. Amy plotted their course to Europa. The trip will take 6 days with this old bucket. That gives us plenty of time to go over the plan. And plenty of time to wonder if we've lost our minds, Ben added. But as the ship lifted off from Earth and headed toward Jupiter, none of them seemed nervous. They had trained for this mission like their lives depended on it because they did. During the long journey, Zara told them more about the aliens they would face. Hegemony guards are tall and strong, but they rely too much on their technology. Their armor is very advanced, but it has weak points. Their weapons are powerful, but they overheat if used too much. What about their reflexes? Lisa asked. Slower than humans. Most galactic species evolved on worlds with less gravity than Earth. They are not used to moving quickly or thinking fast under pressure. Jake studied the intelligence that Zara had provided. The processing station had maybe 30 guards, which seemed like good odds until he remembered that each guard had armor and weapons far superior to anything humans had ever built. The key is surprise, he reminded his team. They won't expect an attack at all, especially not from humans. By the time they figure out what's happening, we need to already have the slaves moving to safety. On the 4th day of their journey, they detected something on their sensors. 3 hegemony patrol ships were heading toward Europa on a routine supply run. Perfect timing, Amy said sarcastically. Now we'll have extra guards to deal with. But Jake saw an opportunity. Or we'll have a distraction. Ben, can you intercept their communications? Ben worked his magic with the communication equipment. Soon they were listening to the alien voices discussing their boring supply mission. Through Zara's translation, they learned that the patrol ships would dock at the station for 12 hours before returning to their base. That's when we strike, Jake decided, while they're unloading supplies and the station is busy. 2 days later, they reached Europa. The moon was covered in ice that reflected Jupiter's massive presence in the sky. Somewhere beneath that ice was a hidden prison holding hundreds of innocent beings. Amy landed their ship in a deep crater on the far side of the moon, where it would be hidden from the processing station's sensors. From there, they would have to travel 15 miles through ice caves to reach their target. Everyone ready? Jake asked as they put on their environmental suits. Let's go free some slaves, Lisa said, shouldering her pack of explosives. The ice caves of Europa were like nothing any of them had ever seen. Tunnels of blue ice stretched for miles, lit by strange glowing bacteria that had somehow survived in the frozen environment. The gravity was much lighter than Earth's, which made walking feel like floating. This place is beautiful, Amy whispered as they made their way through the glowing tunnels. It would be more beautiful without the slave camp, Jake replied. They reached the processing station after 6 hours of careful travel. Through a crack in the ice floor, they could see the metal structure built into a natural cavern. Lights moved around inside as guards went about their duties. There, Zara pointed to a section of the station. That is where they keep the slaves. The metal is thinner there because they never expected anyone to attack from below. Lisa set her charges carefully around the weak points that Zara had identified. Give me 10 minutes after the explosion before you come through, she said. I need to make sure the hole is big enough. Jake checked his watch. According to their plan, the patrol ships would be docking right about now. The station would be busy and distracted. Everyone knows what to do, Jake said. Get in, get the slaves, get out. If something goes wrong, don't try to be heroes, just run. But even as he said it, Jake knew none of his team would run if others needed help. It was not the human way. Lisa triggered her explosives. The blast echoed through the ice caves like thunder. Immediately, alarm sounds started coming from the processing station. Go, 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 Jake shouted. They dropped through the hole in the floor and found themselves in the slave quarters. The room was filled with beings from dozens of different species, all wearing the same gray uniforms and the same hopeless expressions, until they saw humans armed with improvised weapons, ready to fight for their freedom. We're here to get you out, Jake announced. Zara quickly translated into several galactic languages. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Slaves who had given up hope suddenly came alive with possibility. They grabbed whatever they could, used as weapons, and prepared to fight for their freedom. The exit is this way, Ben called out, having found the route to the surface that Zara had described. But as they started moving the slaves toward freedom, hegemony guards finally responded to the attack. They came through the main entrance in formation, wearing their advanced armor and carrying energy weapons that hummed with deadly power. Take cover, Jake yelled. What happened next was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever seen. The hegemony guards expected to face a conventional attack from beings who fought like civilized species. Instead, they found themselves facing humans who fought like wild animals and freed slaves who had nothing left to lose. Lisa's improvised explosives went off in sequence, collapsing tunnels and cutting off reinforcements. Ben jammed their communications, making it impossible for them to coordinate their response. Amy provided covering fire with weapons that looked primitive, but shot just as straight as any advanced technology. And Jake led the charge, showing the galaxy what human determination looked like when innocent lives were at stake. The hegemony guards had better equipment, but they had never faced anything like human creativity combined with alien desperation. Freed slaves used their knowledge of the station to create traps and diversions. Engineers rewired security systems to work against their former captors. Healers kept the fighters going when they were wounded. "Their armor has cooling vents on the back," shouted an alien engineer who looked like a walking tree. "Hit them there." "The energy weapons overheat after 12 shots," called out a being who resembled a giant insect. "Make them waste their ammunition." In 30 minutes of chaotic fighting, Jake's small team and the freed slaves had taken control of the entire processing station. The hegemony guards who were still alive had retreated to their ships and were calling for help. "Time to go," Amy said as she monitored enemy communications. "Reinforcements are coming." But as they prepared to evacuate, Jake made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running, he walked to the station's main communication console. "What are you doing?" Zara asked. "Sending a message," Jake replied. He activated the station's most powerful transmitter, the one designed to send signals across the galaxy. With Zara translating, Jake broadcast a message to every hegemony ship in the solar system. "This is Jake Miller of Earth," he began. "You just learned what happens when you enslave innocent beings in our neighborhood. Consider this your only warning. Any species that seeks freedom from oppression will find sanctuary on Earth. Any species that continues to practice slavery will find enemies among humanity." He paused, looking around at the freed slaves who were listening to his words with amazement. "We know you think we're primitive. You're right. We're too primitive to know when something is impossible. Too primitive to understand why we should mind our own business. Too primitive to let evil happen when we can stop it." Jake smiled at the communication console as if he could see the hegemony commanders on the other end. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Try not to piss us off again." As they evacuated the processing station with over 300 freed slaves, Jake wondered what he had just started. The galaxy would never be the same after today. But looking at the faces of beings who had thought they would die as slaves and were now free, Jake decided he could live with the consequences. The hegemony fleet arrived at Europa 6 hours after Jake's message. 12 massive warships, each one bigger than a city, surrounded the processing station. Their weapons could have turned the entire moon into dust, but they found nothing to shoot at. The humans and freed slaves had disappeared into the ice caves like ghosts. By the time the hegemony forces landed, the only thing left was Jake's message playing on repeat from the station's communication system. "Find them," commanded Admiral Keth, the hegemony officer in charge of the fleet. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms, each one ending in claws that could cut through metal. No primitive species humiliates the hegemony and lives, but as his soldiers searched Europa, they found something that confused them. The ice caves went on for hundreds of miles in every direction. There were thousands of tunnels, and many of them led to hidden chambers where the escaped slaves could hide. "How did they know about the cave system?" one of his officers asked. They didn't, Admiral Keth realized with growing anger. They learned it as they went. These humans adapt to any situation. Meanwhile, 15 miles away in a hidden ice cavern, Jake was leading the largest and strangest meeting of his life. 300 beings from dozens of different worlds sat around improvised campfires, planning their next move. "Earth is not ready to defend itself against a full hegemony attack," said Dr. Vex, a brilliant scientist who looked like a blue octopus. "Their technology is still centuries behind ours." "Then we'll have to even the odds," Jake replied. An engineer named Korath, whose species resembled walking crystals, stepped forward. "Many of us have knowledge that could help Earth advance quickly. Weapons, shields, faster than light travel. The hegemony will try to stop any technological transfer," warned Zara. "Let them try," said Amy, who had been listening to the alien discussions with fascination. "We've got something they don't." "What's that?" asked Dr. Vex. "We've got each other." Over the next few days, while the hegemony fleet searched for them, the refugees began sharing their knowledge with the humans. It was exactly what the hegemony had feared. Primitive humans learning advanced technology. But what happened was more than just technology transfer. The aliens were amazed by human ingenuity and determination. The humans were inspired by alien knowledge and perspective. Together they started creating things that neither group could have built alone. "Look at this," Ben said excitedly, as he worked with a communications expert from a species that looked like walking plants. Their quantum entanglement technology combined with our satellite networks could give Earth instant communication across the galaxy. Lisa was equally excited about working with alien demolitions experts. Their molecular disruptors plus our improvised explosives equal really big booms, she explained with a grin. But the most important development was not technological. It was social. On my world, explained Tavek, a being who resembled a giant cat, cooperation only happens within the same species. Different races always compete. But here, everyone works together regardless of what they look like. "That's how we survived," Jake said. "Earth is a dangerous place. We learned long ago that we're stronger together than apart." "The hegemony has never seen anything like this," Zara added. "They maintain power by keeping different species from working together. But you humans naturally build alliances. After a week of hiding in the ice caves, they received an unexpected message. It came from Earth, transmitted by radio stations around the world. "This is President Williams," the message began. "We have been monitoring the situation on Europa. To any being seeking freedom from oppression, Earth officially offers you sanctuary. To the hegemony fleet in our solar system, you have 24 hours to leave peacefully." Admiral Keth laughed when he heard the message. "The entire human military could not scratch the paint on one of our ships. Their president is bluffing." But he was not laughing an hour later when his sensors detected something impossible. Hundreds of human ships were rising from Earth and heading toward Europa. They were not military vessels. They were cargo ships, passenger liners, private yachts, and converted airplanes, anything that could carry people through space. "What are they doing?" Admiral Keth demanded. His intelligence officer studied the sensor readings. "Sir, it appears that human civilians are coming to help with the evacuation." "Civilians? They're sending untrained civilians against a hegemony battle fleet?" "Yes, sir. The transmissions indicate that these are volunteers. Teachers, farmers, shopkeepers, retired people. They heard about the refugees and decided to help." Admiral Keth stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In his experience, only professional soldiers fought in space battles. But Earth was sending everyone. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving thousands of messages from the approaching human ships. Put them on speaker." The bridge filled with voices speaking dozens of different languages, but all saying the same thing in different ways. "We're coming to help. Hold on." Admiral Keith had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved hundreds of species. He had seen fear, hatred, and desperation, but he had never seen anything like this voluntary mobilization of an entire species to help strangers. "Admiral," his weapons officer said nervously. "Orders, sir?" Admiral Keth looked at the display showing nearly 1,000 human ships approaching his position. Each one was small and weak compared to his warships. He could destroy them all in minutes, but something held him back. Maybe it was the realization that destroying 1,000 civilian ships would make the hegemony look like monsters to the entire galaxy. Maybe it was the growing understanding that humans were something new and dangerous, a species that fought harder for others than for themselves. Or maybe it was the message that Jake broadcast next, speaking directly to the hegemony fleet. "Admiral Keth, this is Jake Miller. You came here looking for escaped slaves. What you found was proof that the age of the hegemony is ending. Today, 1,000 human civilians are risking their lives to save beings they've never met. Tomorrow, it will be 10,000. Next month, it will be 1,000,000. Jake's voice was calm but determined. "You built your empire on the idea that strength comes from conquest and fear. But real strength comes from people choosing to stand together. Every species you've enslaved has friends. Now every world you've conquered has allies. You can destroy our ships today, but you can't destroy what we represent. Hope, freedom, the idea that no one has to face oppression alone." Admiral Keth listened to the message and realized that something had changed in the galaxy forever. The hegemony had always maintained control by keeping different species isolated and afraid, but humans had just proven that cooperation across species was not only possible, but powerful. "Admiral?" his weapons officer asked again. Admiral Keth looked at his officers, then at the display showing 1,000 human ships coming to rescue slaves that the hegemony had thrown away. "Stand down weapons," he ordered. "We're leaving." "Sir? You heard me. Signal the fleet. We're returning to base." As the hegemony warships departed, the human-civilian fleet arrived at Europa. Teachers and farmers worked alongside alien engineers to load refugees onto ships. Retired grandparents comforted traumatized slaves. Children shared their toys with young aliens who had never owned anything. Jake stood with Zara on the surface of Europa, watching the evacuation. Hundreds of ships were ferrying refugees to Earth, where they would find new homes and new hope. "What happens now?" Zara asked. "Now we build something better," Jake replied. "A galaxy where strength comes from helping each other instead of hurting each other." 6 months later, Earth had become the center of a growing alliance of free worlds. The technology shared by grateful refugees had advanced human civilization by centuries. More importantly, Earth had become a symbol of hope for oppressed beings everywhere. The hegemony still existed, but their empire was slowly crumbling as more and more species chose freedom over submission. They had learned the hard way that some things were more powerful than advanced weapons, things like the stubborn human refusal to let innocent people suffer. Jake Miller returned to his cabin in Montana, but he was no longer alone. Zara had chosen to stay with him, and together they welcomed a steady stream of visitors, refugees looking for guidance, human officials seeking advice, and alien diplomats learning about this strange species that had changed everything. "Dario, you ever regret finding me in the snow?" Zara asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Jake smiled and put his arm around her shoulders. "Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me, to all of us." In the distance, they could see lights in the sky, ships coming and going from Earth's new spaceports. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but it was also full of possibility now. And it had all started because one human being refused to let a stranger die in the cold. The age of the hegemony was ending. The age of cooperation was just beginning.